Hey guys, my name is Chris Martin with The Real Albuquerque. I don't know where to look. We got two cameras going on here. One is my GoPro, one is this Facebook live stream. So if I'm looking around, that's the reason. But today I'm coming to you podcasting from The Real Albuquerque in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Chloe's being all cute down here. She'll probably join us here in a second. But today I wanted to talk about kind of 10 things I learned from my grandparents. And I'm going to break it into two parts. This is part one of a two-part series dedicated to things I learned from my grandparents. Now, this is probably more than there's probably more than what I've learned here that I can talk about. But we're going to keep on going with this list. So, guys, if you just checked in, my name is Chris Martin with the Real Albuquerque Podcast Videocast. GoPro's gonna probably cancel out here, so we'll just go straight Facebook Live here. Today, talking about 5 things I learned from my grandparents. Now, a little background history. They grew up in mid-Depression style. My grandma's 95 years old, or 96. She's in the mid-90s. And my grandpa is just recently passed away, but he was also in his mid-90s. Meaning they grew up in the 1920s, 1930s, somewhere in there. Now, history-wise, that's Great Depression style. Banks closing, everybody rationed out food, rationed out gas. Cars were just coming online. This is before internet days, before AOL Instant Messenger, before a lot of things. He used to tell me about the days when he lived in Chicago and the days that he lived in San Francisco and had, he used to burn kerosene in his car, illegally of course, instead of gasoline because it was cheaper and he could do it and he figured out a way. So, but that's just a little background on that. Grandpa was in the Navy veteran. Grandma was a OG Depression veteran in the sense that she usually pinched pennies a lot and did a lot of that kind of stuff to save money, which is how they got through most of their life. And that's one of the things here. But let me just go into this. So 5 things I learned part 1 from my grandparents. Step 1 is education doesn't mean or equal success. We have Chloe here. She's part of the show too. Education doesn't mean success. So what do I mean by that? I mean, my grandpa had limited education, of course, graduated from high school. I can't remember where my grandma went through education, but they didn't go to higher level college. They didn't get masters. They didn't get their degrees and get a doctorate degree. But I would put my grandpa up against most engineers to this day for diesel engines, ham radios, electronics, anything that had to do with Ohm's law. This cat, my grandpa, could do that. My grandma, very skilled in, knitting, baking, cooking. And they didn't really, and banking. She was highly into accounting, one of the best accountants and bankers that I know at this time. And in her heyday, she would be on top of it, check after check, pennies, doing old school, making sure the checkbook matched up old school style, one penny at a time. But success really doesn't have to come at the cost of education or getting a student loan. I'm not saying that you don't have to go to high school. I'm not saying you don't have to go to college, but or get a master's or doctorate. I'm not saying any of that. But what I am saying, if you can find a way, you can be smart enough to go and be very successful in life without having to go to a higher education college. And I learned that from them firsthand because my grandpa, man, he's basically an electrical engineer, but didn't have a PhD, didn't have a college degree, and didn't have a master's or any type of degree, but he knew Ohm's laws back and forth. He built his own radios, ham radios, built his own diesel engines, built his own engines. He built his first engine when he was in, mid-teens to I think late teens. Built it all from scratch, CNC every part out in a lathe. Built it together, and it was a working engine, maybe the size of an airplane, radio airplane engine. But it worked, and it still works. I believe he had it working just a few years ago. And, he did that all without the internet, without encyclopedias, without higher education. Then he later went into the Navy and became a diesel mechanic for the Navy, or pardon me, the U.S. Coast Guard, and finished out there, and then came back and did work at his shop and became basically tool and die mechanic and designer for, geez, probably 70 or 60 or 70 years. Second thing that I learned from my grandparents is you can talk across the world old school. Now, what do I mean by that? It's such a simple concept of using a ham radio to talk across the world. You can bounce radio waves off of what's called the ionosphere, and then those radio waves end up over in Europe somewhere, or across into Hawaii, or across to China or Russia. He said he would always talk to China or Russia sometimes. They were Jehovah's Witnesses, and they would talk to other Jehovah's Witnesses, JVs, or JWs, over in Europe and Russia if the ionosphere was good. But we'd always go on vacation, or he'd come visit us in Albuquerque, and he would tap into a repeater here on the Sandia Crest and be talking all the way to California. And this is before internet, this is before AOL Instant Messenger, obviously right around the time where cell phones were maybe just still a briefcase size, if you can remember those. The backpack, if you've seen Big Lebowski, you know what I'm talking about there. He had a briefcase, suitcase phone. Another funny couple stories was he would carry this basically ham radio, and he would listen to everybody within a 3 or 4 mile radius of their phone calls, because over 900 megahertz at the time wasn't 1.5 gigahertz or it wasn't even the gigahertz range. It was in the 800 to probably 750 to 900 megahertz range for your wireless headsets. You know, your headsets like this that you plug in, cordless. And that's reminiscent of the movie Something About Mary, when that old grandma's doing it and they're making that fake conversation about how good they are and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Same thing, my grandpa did that. It was hilarious to hear these conversations. I go to school and come back and say, Grandpa, what did you learn? And some of them, you're like, you don't want to know what your neighbors are doing in a 5 mile radius. But I learned that you could talk to people in an old school manner, and then you can still do it today. Ham radio is still very popular. It's very, you know, organic, very simple. You have a radio, you have an antenna, and you can talk to different people across the world for relatively low cost, and it's actually pretty fun. All right, that's 2. Number 3 is no dream is too big, or no dream is too small. I'm tapping ignore on my phone. Got a little reminder message there. Tapped it, it's gone now. So no dream is too big or too small. My grandpa grew up in a time where, you know, electric energy, you know, gas engines. This is 1920, 1930 Depression style. Electric cars were just, you know, maybe a mere dream back then. So electric cars didn't even exist, or having electronic anything wasn't even a possibility. We were still highly, just for a few years ago, we've been highly tied to fossil fuels, gas, right? And one of his biggest dreams was to own an electric car, and he made that dream come true, which, you know, if you talk to somebody in maybe the 30s or 40s, having a fully electric car would be crazy to say, because, you know, they were relying on diesel then, fuels, kerosene, in some places candles, right? Electricity was just becoming maybe widespread there. Actually, you might have to fact check that statement, but my point is when you grow up in mid-Missouri, in nowhere, Missouri, having an electric car, having the sheer idea of owning something that can really just run off batteries, just till recently has become a reality. You know, if you ask some people 5-10 years ago, you know, they say, electric car, you're already crazy, dog. That's not gonna work. We have diesel, we have all this fossil fuels, we have all this fuel, why would we even think about electric? We're all good. Now global warming and all this stuff has happened, so people are like, okay, maybe we need to think about this. Hybrid cars that now exist, you know, the Porsche 918, Ferrari LaFerrari, you know, the P1, McLaren P1, Chevy Volt, Nissan Leaf, etc. Prius is kind of a half electric, half 90% gas, 10% electric. But so he made that dream come true of owning electric car when he was, I think he got it when he was 90, and he would always talk to me about it, of how he'd say, Chris, how many gallons of gas did you use this week? And I'm like, shoot, Grandpa, I don't know, maybe 13, 14, I had to fill up. He's like, well, I bought this car 3 years ago, and I've used 1.5 gallons of gas since. And so that was a cool dream. But that's just a microcosm of a macrocosm of no dream is too big or too small. So if someone says, hey, we're gonna have flying cars now, or I wanna own a flying car, you know, that's what the equivalent to having an electric car back in 1930 or 1940 was. It was that crazy to think about, you know? But we're gonna be living like the Jetsons maybe when I'm older, or when all you guys are listening are older. You know, when we're 90, maybe that's the dream, and we'll be doing the Jetsons thing, the boop, 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 you know, little Astros floating around next to us and all that kind of things. Okay, number 4 that I learned from my grandparents, a lesson is always embrace your inner child. Every time that I visited my grandparents, they were, you know, whether they were 60, 70, 80, or 90, they always knew how to smile and have fun. We'd always joke around, and no problem would ever really take them away from smiling or laughing or having a good time. You just like, when you go see them, all the stuff just sinks, you know, all the responsibilities of the day just disappear. Everything just kind of disappears, and nothing really matters. Time goes slow. It's like when you get into a new relationship or something, it just all works and you don't really see any negative possibilities. But that's how I lived all the time. And I really enjoyed that, and it makes me smile. So going to see him, you can make something as silly as going to the grocery store a lot of fun. My grandpa would get in this, he had this rascal type thing, and then he would get in one of those motorized scooters, and you know, he kind of earned it. He was 92 at the time, 93, and we'd go cruise Walmart, and he'd be goofing around, and we just had a lot of fun. So something as simple as checking out at Walmart or going to Walmart can be a little to a lot of fun if you just smile and have a great time. Okay, number 4. I'm going to try to keep this guys short. Try to keep this short, guys. I don't know. I mixed my sentences up there. Shout out to everybody's who's still listening. Stacy, Alec, Timo, thank you for watching. Thank you for spending this few minutes with me. The last one I'm going to do today, this is a 2-part series. I have 5 more, and I probably will think of like 1,000 more. But what really brought this and sparked this is my grandpa passed away just a few months ago. And it really started to make me think of, in retrospect, of what really did I learn from my grandpa and grandma, my grandma's still alive in Boonville, 96 or 95, still hustling, OG status, doing great. But it really made me think of what I actually learned and took away. You start to reflect, if you ever lose your grandparents or a family member or something like that, you start to reflect and think about what you miss, and you miss all those good times that you thought were pretty average and boring. I wish I could have those all back now. But you start reflecting on your life with them, what you learned, what you take away, what they were trying to secretly teach you through their actions, through their voice, through what you did. Through how they lived. And this is just a short list. So number 5, this is a homage or whatever, however you say it, to my grandma. One thing I learned from my grandma is always watch the birds. And this sounds very simple and very silly, and I'll tell you why I like this one so much, is because she had this book, and it was a bird encyclopedia, I don't know, maybe 100 to 200 pages, and she had this 3 or 4 bird feeders, and she would check these bird patterns and watch these birds. They would eat breakfast and watch the birds, and she'd look at my book, or look at her book, and she'd say, oh, that's a robin. And she'd go into the robin and say, oh, yeah, they're early this season. Last time I saw a robin here was August of I'm making dates up, August of 2014. I'm like, oh my gosh. You know, so she had this big, long, in-depth history of when she saw these birds, their migration patterns. That's the technical side, but recently, I was at my friend Sean Fry's house. You guys may know Sean Fry, Sean Dolan Fry for other people. And he has this massive hummingbird feeder, and it took me back to that moment where I was watching birds with my grandma for breakfast. And there's just something so relaxing and so simple and so fun about just watching the birds. They're flapping around, they're drinking the hummingbird juice, they're having fun, they're eating the seeds, they're playing around, they're talking with each other. It just makes my inner child smile. Maybe some of you can relate to that, maybe some of you can't. Maybe you'll see it now. You'll go out and try to you see bird feeders, to check it out. I dare you just to spend 5 minutes and watch the birds play. And one of these things goes back to, that kind of goes back to number 3, what I talked about, or actually, pardon me, the one just before that, always embrace your inner child. Because life is too short to be all kind of negative and everything like that. And it's these simple things that build into bigger things in life. And that was one of them, is just simply just watching birds. So just something simple as watching birds takes me back and allows me to embrace my inner child. Rolling around in Boonville, Missouri in a Walmart that they just got and they were so excited about. In a rascal with my grandpa, barely finding the food that we're having, and his menu was all misspelled, and it was so much fun. And then him interacting just to check out was just a lot of fun, and driving and cruising around the vault. I put on his glasses that my grandma has to wear for driving, and I beat all goofy and stuff. That's being always embracing your inner child. I had so much fun with that. No dream is too big or too small. This is a recap. My grandpa wanted to own an electric car in his lifetime. He said that for maybe 20 years that I remember. And he finally rectified that dream just a few years ago, and he passed away just a few months ago. But that was a big long life dream of him, is to own an electric car, and he made it happen. An example of that today would be like owning a flying car or going to space. It sounds crazy as shit, but it's still possible when maybe 70 or 60 or 50 years from now or 40 years from now. You just don't know, but these are the crazy dreams. So don't worry. Don't be too afraid to dream too big, because no dream is too big. Number 4, actually number 2 that I talked about, number 4 going up the list, is you can talk across the world old school and have fun doing it. Ham radios, he was a big ham radio fan. WB0, WOZ was his call sign. And he became a ham radio a long time ago and just had really a lot of fun with it. We would sit in his car. He had 2 antennas in his LeSabre and on his van, and he had all these antennas at his house, and we would talk across the world to other JWs, Jehovah's Witnesses. They were Jehovah's Witnesses for a good amount of their life, which was a lot of fun. That's in the next list, next 5. But we could talk across the world, hit the ionosphere, talk to Europe, talk to Asia, talk to Russia, talk to Australia. He would come to Albuquerque, we'd hit the repeater on the mountain, and we'd talk to California or Florida. He'd pick up local conversations from your 900 megahertz cordless phones, something about Mary style, which is a lot of fun. He never did tell me what he did here, but he did assure me that it was pretty, not shareable to a 5-year-old. Okay, number 1 reason that I tried to, we're reconnected, now we're back. The number 1 reason out of the 5 that I mentioned today that I learned from my grandparents is education doesn't directly equal success, meaning you can go and get just a high school degree and not go through college, doctoral degrees, masters, getting all these crazy 20 years in college to become successful. They become very successful, and he had just only a high school and middle school degree from Lamine and Boonville High School, which is middle of Missouri, nowhere in Missouri, next to Columbia, which is Mizzou. Very small Missouri is what I'm trying to say, maybe 100 people at the time, maybe 50, something of that nature. Very isolated, very small. He got his high school diploma there. And from there, he became basically an electrical engineer by self-teaching himself electronics. He built his own Bose radio sets, if you would want to call it that. At the time, it was high fidelity radio. Now, high fidelity radio is gone, and now it's like HD and past that. But high fidelity radio at the time was very important. He used to crack into the satellite TV things and change the codes and got satellite for free. He built his own 4-stroke engine or 2-stroke engine, can't remember, his own engine that was the size of an airplane engine. By hand, he died out and tooled the whole machine. And it still runs today. He ran it a few years ago before he passed away. These are just small things. He ran a very successful tool and die company for, it was, probably 50, 60, 70 years time. If you ever had a coffee maker, he made one of the Toastmaster coffee maker dies. And so if you ever had a Toastmaster coffee maker, there's a big chance that the die that he created made that thing that strains the coffee into the pot. He actually dyed that out and made that in Missouri, sold that to Toastmaster, and they made couple 100,000 coffee makers back in the time. Back at the time, it wasn't Toastmaster, pardon me, it was Rival, and then Rival became Toastmaster. So if you ever had a Rival or Toastmaster coffee maker, there's a good chance that Bob Martin, my grandpa, made that die to make the little coffee bean juice go into the coffee bean juice pot or holder or kettle or whatever you want to call it. I'm being a little goofy today. Okay, guys, this is just part one of 5 things that I learned from my grandparents who were born in the 1920s. My grandma's still alive today. She's 95, 96, maybe 97. I can't remember offhand. I just did hot yoga, so my brain's all garbly goop. Grandpa passed away just recently, 93, 94. Also born in the mid-20s and had little to no modernized education, but made a very big impact on his life and our family's lives off of not too much. My grandma was basically a glorified accountant. Glorified meaning she never did it past, I think 30 or something, but she's very on it with accounting, and I learned how to do a lot of accounting things from her, making sure everything was dialed up. So recap. Top 5 things I learned from my grandparents who were born in the mid-20s and lasted through the Depression, lasted through the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. I feel like I'm on a radio show. 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, 2000s, and now we're in middle 2010s. This is a 2-part series. Next part will probably come out later this week. Recap. Number 1, education doesn't mean success. So you don't have to have higher education to become successful. You can teach yourself and become self-taught and do that. Get education on a job, OJT, and learn any trade by doing it that way. Number 2, you can talk across the world old school. You can talk across the world with ham radios, Morse code if you want to go very old school. And it's really a lot of fun. It's kind of relaxing. No dream is too big. Whatever dream you think of now, I'm talking about owning a flying car, going to space, is equivalent to what my grandpa's dream was of owning an fully electric car. Back when, 30, 40 years ago, when everything was just gas, he made that dream come true. So excited to make it happen. So no dream is too big or too small. If I told you, hey, I'm gonna go to space and live on the moon right now, if I put it down on Facebook Live video, that's gonna happen. You could say, hey, Chris, you're very crazy, but 60 years from now, I could be doing a Facebook Live video from space on the moon saying, what now? So no dream is too big. So think about that as you go through your day. Always embrace your inner child. You can always have fun with where you're at and where you're at mentally, physically, spiritually, monetarily, location-wise, wherever you're at, you can always smile and embrace your inner child and have fun, dance around in the rain, do the happy dance. Tiki, if you're watching still, you know what I'm talking about. All this stuff can happen. You can still be that inner child and still not have to worry about big kid problems like bills and all that kind of nonsense that really means nothing in your life. Last one today, 5 of 5, is watch birds. It sounds so simple, but I watched birds with my friend Sean Fry this weekend. He has like a hummingbird, and he had like 12 hummingbirds fighting for this feeder. And it took me back to a time where I was in Boonville eating breakfast with my grandparents, watching all these beautiful birds come to their feeders. My grandma would say, hey, you know what that is? That's a red-breasted swallow, and that's a male robin, and this is something or other. And last time I saw it was here, and we just watched the birds for like 30 minutes, not thinking about our phones or playing Candy Crush or what Pokemon's out there distracting the birds. You know, what the Pokemon, making the birds go away or vice versa, the birds scaring the Pokemon away. That was not an issue back then, and life was very simple and it was a lot of fun. Hey guys, my name is Chris Martin with The Real Albuquerque. This is just a live video talking about 5 things that I learned from my grandparents. It's ongoing, of course, but this is part 1. Part 2, part dos, or part dva if you're Russian, will come out later this week as I do more and more live videos. You can also check this out on our podcast, TheRealAlbuquerquePodcast.com, I think, or it's actually TheRealAlbuquerque.com. We're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher, SoundCloud, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're on all social networks. Check us out. Thank you for watching. We didn't get a very good appearance of Chloe. She's running around doing Chloe things. I'm going to go run around, do Chloe things, and act like let my inner child out and have fun and enjoy the rest of my Monday. Thank you guys for watching. Happy Monday, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, bye, guys.